Welcome to English with Zenko Master. Get ready to learn something new today.
I still remember that cold Saturday morning when I walked past Ethan's room and heard nothing but music playing softly behind the closed door. It wasn't like him. He was usually out early, walking or drawing or talking to someone on the phone. But that morning, the silence felt heavy. I knocked once. My name is Anna Rayner, and I've been a mother long enough to know when something is wrong. We had lived on Creswell Street in the quiet town of Dalton for over 10 years, and by now I could feel when something in the house didn't feel right. I knocked again and opened the door slowly. He was sitting on the floor with an old photo album open in front of him. The light from the window touched his face, and I could see something in his eyes. Not sadness exactly, but something close to it. I walked in quietly, not wanting to break the moment, though my heart was already nervous. He looked up at me with a photo in his hand. His voice was calm but full of feeling when he asked, "Do you remember this day?" I took the photo and saw two little kids smiling at the camera. One of them was Ethan at 5 years old. The other was Maria. She had a big pink bow in her hair, and Ethan had chocolate on his chin. It was from his birthday, the last one before everything changed. "Of course," I said, smiling. "You both looked so happy." But I didn't feel happy. That day was a turning point in our lives. Ethan always believed his father left on the same day. In truth, Simon left a few weeks later, but I never corrected Ethan. What difference did it make now? Pain doesn't need a perfect memory to grow. Ethan sat back and stared at the photo. "It's strange how clear that day is in my mind," he said. "The cake, the music, even the color of the balloons. And then he was gone." I wanted to tell him that things were more complicated than they seemed, but I didn't. Instead, I walked to the window so he wouldn't see my face. I still remembered that letter Simon left on the kitchen table. 12 years ago. No calls. No birthday wishes. Nothing. And then, just last week, out of nowhere, the phone rang. It was Simon. He said he wanted to meet. I told him no. My voice had said no, but my heart didn't sound so sure. I looked back at Ethan, who was now sorting through more photos of Maria. "I want to take some of these with me when I move to London," he said, "for art school. They liked my work, Mom. They said my ideas were different. I think I'll get in." He smiled, hopeful. I wanted to feel the same, but something inside me whispered caution. He was young. So much could still go wrong. "It's early," I said, "and we don't have an answer yet." But he was already somewhere else in his mind. He held a photo of Maria, aged 11, and laughed. "Look at her. Do you think she's changed?" I said nothing, though I had seen changes in Maria. Not all of them were easy to understand. Later that evening, Ethan came into the kitchen. "I'm going over to Maria's. We might eat there. Don't wait up." I asked if he had finished his homework, and he rolled his eyes like teenagers do. "Yes, Mom. Everything's done." Then he was gone. His voice still hung in the air when the phone rang. I reached for it quickly, my heart jumping. Maybe it was Simon again, but it wasn't. "Hello, Mrs. Rayner. Is Ethan there?" It was Maria. She sounded odd, unsure. "No," I said. "He just left for your house." There was silence on the other end. "Oh, I can't go out tonight after all, but I'll tell him when he gets here. Thanks." She hung up. I stood in the kitchen holding the phone, confused. Something in her voice didn't sit right. A part of me wanted to believe it was nothing. But another part, the part that had learned to read the smallest signs, knew that something had changed. A few blocks away, in another part of our town, a woman named Nina was dealing with her own crossroads. She was sitting at her kitchen table while her son Max told her about his day at school. He had scored 100% in maths, and his little face was full of pride. "You're just like your mom," she said with a smile, but her mind wasn't really there. Nina had just been offered a job, an important one, in another city, Newcastle. A big step. A chance to lead a branch 5 times bigger than her current bank. And yet, her heart wasn't celebrating. Her husband David came home soon after. He worked as a head chef in one of the best French restaurants in town. The hours were long. The work was hard. But he loved it. That night, after Max had gone to bed, Nina told him about the job offer. "They want me to move. In 3 months," she said. David looked at her, his eyes unreadable. "What did you say?" She took a deep breath. "I said I was interested, but I wanted to talk to you first." He got up, poured some water, and thought for a while. Then, with a quiet smile, he said, "Say yes." Nina was surprised. "Really? You've worked hard. You deserve this. I'll find another job. A restaurant. Something. Max will be okay. We'll be okay." She wanted to cry, not because she was sad, but because it meant so much to be supported. They talked about schools, friends, grandparents, and all the small details that make up a life. But in the end, it was decided. They would move. Not far from them, another woman was sitting alone on her sofa. Her name was Maggie. She held a photo from her recent trip to Chile. It showed a group of smiling hikers standing under a wide blue sky. She and her friend Clara had gone walking in the Andes. But Maggie remembered more than mountains. She remembered Xavier, their guide. Funny, warm, full of stories. He had a way of looking at you that made you feel seen. She hadn't meant to fall for him, but somehow it happened. And now, weeks later, she still felt it. She had received an email from him that morning. It was short. "I'm coming to England soon. I need to talk. I've written a letter to explain everything." Maggie didn't know what to think. She didn't know if it was about love or trouble or something else. But part of her wanted to believe it was love. Later, her friend Clara came over for dinner. They laughed and talked, and for a while, Maggie forgot her worry. Until someone knocked on the door. Before I share the rest of my story, I need to know, where are you listening from? Knowing someone hears me, understands me, gives me strength. That evening after Ethan left, I stayed in the kitchen long after the sky had gone dark. The house felt different. There was a kind of stillness that made every small sound louder. The hum of the fridge, the gentle tick of the old clock above the sink, even the sound of my own breathing felt strange. I stood by the window, looking out at the quiet street. I couldn't see Ethan anywhere. I knew he had gone to Maria's house, but something in my chest felt uneasy. It wasn't just about the photos or the memory of his father. It was something else. I couldn't name it yet, but it was there. I tried to keep my hands busy, wiping the counters and folding a tea towel over and over. I checked my phone, though I hadn't heard it ring. A part of me was hoping for a message, maybe even from Simon. But the screen was empty. I sighed and poured myself a small glass of red wine. The first sip didn't taste right, but I finished it anyway. When the phone finally rang, I jumped. It was Maria. Her voice was quiet, almost nervous. She asked if Ethan was home. I told her no, He had just left for her place. There was a long pause on the line. Then she told me she couldn't go out with him tonight. Something had come up, she said. Her voice didn't sound like her usual cheerful self. It was uncertain, even a little sad. I asked if she was all right. She said she was fine, but I didn't believe her. Before I could ask anything else, she said goodbye and hung up. I stood there, holding the phone in my hand, and stared at the screen. My stomach felt tight. Something was wrong. Maria was a sweet girl. She and Ethan had grown up together. They had been close since primary school. I thought their connection was special, but now I wasn't so sure. I sat down and stared at the clock. It was only 8 o'clock, but it already felt like midnight. When Ethan came home, he didn't say much. I heard the front door open, then close. His footsteps were slow. I stayed in the kitchen, waiting to hear him come in and say something. But he didn't. I heard him go straight up to his room and close the door. I wanted to follow him, to ask how things had gone, but I didn't. I knew that kind of quiet. It was the same kind I had felt after Simon left. I stayed downstairs for a while longer and looked through the old photo album Ethan had left behind. The pictures were full of smiles and birthday cakes, balloons and silly faces. There were so many of Ethan and Maria together, running through parks, eating ice cream, making faces at the camera. It was clear they had shared a lot. I closed the album carefully and placed it back on the shelf. The next morning, Ethan didn't come down for breakfast. I knocked on his door, and he said he wasn't hungry. I asked if he was all right. He said he was tired. I didn't push. I made toast and tea and sat at the kitchen table with the newspaper, but my eyes kept drifting to the hallway. Later that day, I found an envelope near the front door. It didn't have a stamp. My heart jumped when I saw the handwriting. It was from Simon. My hands trembled as I opened it. The letter was short. He said he was in Manchester now, working on a short-term contract. He had been meaning to contact us for a while. He knew it had been 12 years, and he didn't expect forgiveness. But he wanted to see me. He wanted to talk. I read it twice. I didn't know what to feel. I was angry, confused, but also strangely curious. I had spent so many years wondering why he left. And now he was in the same country, only a few hours away. What did he want to say after all this time? That night, I didn't sleep well. I kept thinking about Simon, about what he might look like now, what he might say. I also kept thinking about Ethan. He had barely spoken all day. I worried about what had happened between him and Maria. I wondered if she had told him something hard. Had she ended their relationship? Was that what the phone call was about? On Sunday afternoon, I finally asked Ethan if he wanted to talk. We sat in the living room, both of us staring at the cold fireplace. He looked tired. His face had that empty look I knew too well, the look of someone holding back tears. He told me that Maria had met someone else. She had met a boy while on a trip to France with her family. His name was Julian. They had stayed in contact since the new year. She hadn't planned to fall for him, but it had happened. She said she still cared about Ethan, but in a different way now. I listened as Ethan spoke. His voice didn't shake, but his hands did. I reached out and held one of them in mine. I told him I was proud of him for being honest and that I knew how much it hurt. He nodded but didn't speak again for a while. We sat like that together as the late afternoon sun disappeared behind the curtains. On Monday morning, I walked down to the small cafe near the high street. I needed some time to think. I ordered a cup of tea and sat by the window, watching the people walk past. Some were rushing to work, others pushing prams or carrying shopping bags. Life moved on for everyone else, even when it felt like it had stopped for you. I took Simon's letter from my bag and read it again. At the bottom, he had written a phone number. I didn't know whether I should call him or not. I had told myself I would never let him back into our lives. But now, seeing Ethan in pain, I wondered if knowing his father might give him something he needed. Or would it only make things worse? I left the cafe and walked toward the park. The trees were starting to change color, and the air had that early autumn smell. I sat on a bench and watched two children kick a football across the grass. I thought about the day Simon left. He had written me a note and disappeared. No explanation, no warning, just silence. For 12 years, that silence had filled every space he left behind. Now, with a single letter, he had broken that silence, but I didn't know if I wanted to hear his voice again. When I got home, Ethan was out. He had gone for a walk, he said in a note he left on the fridge. I sat on the sofa and stared at the phone for a long time. Then, before I could change my mind, I dialed the number Simon had written. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Then he answered. His voice was quiet. "Anna," he said. And for a long moment, I didn't know what to say. I heard him say my name again. "Anna?" His voice was deeper, slower than I remembered, but I knew it. I closed my eyes and felt like I was holding something heavy in my chest. I didn't speak right away. There were so many things I had imagined saying to him over the years. Angry words, confused questions, maybe even silence. But now that he was here, real, waiting on the other end of the line, I didn't know how to begin. "It's me," I said finally. My voice was quiet. "I got your letter." There was a pause. "I didn't think you'd call." "Well, I did," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "You said you wanted to talk." "Yes," he said. "I did. I do." I stood by the window and looked out at the street. The sun was low in the sky, and the houses on Creswell Street were covered in soft golden light. Everything looked calm, but my heart wasn't. "You left without saying a word, Simon. No goodbye. No explanation. And now, 12 years later, you send a letter and ask to talk. Do you know what that felt like?" I wasn't shouting, but my voice shook. "Do you know what it did to Ethan?" "I know," he said. "I've thought about it every day. I was a coward, Anna. I panicked. I was scared of becoming my father. I thought if I stayed, I'd ruin you both." "Then why come back now?" I asked. "Why now, after all this time?" There was another long silence. I could hear him breathing on the line. "Because I'm tired of running. I've changed, Anna. I know that might not mean anything to you. I wouldn't blame you if it doesn't. But I want to be better. I want to make things right." My fingers tightened around the phone. Ethan's not a little boy anymore. He's 17 now. He's had to grow up without a father. "I know," Simon said, "but I'd still like to meet him. If he wants to, I'm not asking for anything. Just a chance to say I'm sorry. That's all." I didn't answer right away. My thoughts were turning in every direction. Could I let this man back into our lives, even just for one meeting? I had spent years building a world without him. I had worked hard to give Ethan a sense of safety. What would it mean to open the door again? "I'll speak to him," I said finally, "but I won't promise anything." "That's fair," he said. "Thank you." We said goodbye. I sat down slowly and placed the phone on the table. My hands were shaking. That evening, Ethan came home just before dark. His face looked pale, his shoulders low. I made us both some tea, and we sat in the living room. I waited until he had taken a few sips before I spoke. "I heard from your father," I said softly. Ethan looked up quickly. "You did?" "He sent a letter. I called him today." He didn't say anything right away. I waited. "What did he want?" He asked. "To see us. To explain." Ethan looked down at the floor. He didn't speak for a long time. "Do you want to see him?" I asked. He took a deep breath. "I don't know. Part of me does. Part of me doesn't want to hear anything he has to say. But I also feel like I need to know why he left. I've imagined it so many times. Maybe hearing it will help." I nodded. I felt the same. "Will you come with me?" he asked. "Of course." We agreed to meet Simon in a public place, a cafe near the train station in Manchester. It was a quiet little spot, with a few tables near the window and soft music playing in the background. I arrived with Ethan, and we sat by the door. My heart was racing. Simon walked in 10 minutes later. He looked older. His hair was more gray than I remembered, and there were deep lines on his face. But his eyes were the same. He smiled when he saw us, though it was a small, careful smile. He approached slowly and asked if he could sit. We nodded. There were no hugs, no big emotional moments. Just 3 people trying to find the right words in a room full of unspoken history. "I've thought about this moment for a long time," Simon said. "I just want to say I'm sorry. To both of you, I can't change what I did. I left because I was afraid. Afraid of failing you, afraid of myself. And then, after I left, I didn't know how to come back. Every day that passed made it harder." Ethan looked at him. "You hurt us." "I know," Simon replied. "And I'll always carry that." "I don't forgive you," Ethan said. "Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I wanted to see your face, to hear you say it." Simon nodded. "That's all I hoped for." We sat in that cafe for almost an hour. Most of the time, Ethan asked questions about where Simon had been, what he had done, whether he had started a new family. He hadn't. I listened, watching the boy I raised face the man who left him behind. It wasn't easy, but it was something. Afterward, we left the cafe and walked quietly to the station. Simon didn't follow us. He had said everything he came to say. On the train home, Ethan stared out of the window. I wanted to ask what he was thinking, but I didn't. After a while, he turned to me. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For not hiding it. For letting me decide." I smiled and touched his hand. "I'll always let you choose what's right for you." A few weeks later, a letter arrived for Ethan. It was from the London Art School. He opened it at the kitchen table, his fingers moving slowly. "They want me," he said, his voice almost a whisper. "They've offered me a place." Tears filled my eyes. I got up and hugged him. "I'm so proud of you." "I thought they'd never write," he said. "Well, they did. And you're going to do great things." Ethan looked down at the letter again. "I'll have to move to London." "I know. I'll come back on weekends." "We'll see," I said with a smile. "Just promise to call your mum once in a while." He laughed. It was the first real laugh I'd heard from him in weeks. As summer turned into autumn, Ethan began preparing for art school. We shopped for supplies and found a small flat for him near the school. He looked nervous but excited. It was the start of something new for him, and maybe for both of us. Simon didn't try to push his way back in. He called once more, just to say goodbye before Ethan left. I think that was enough for now. Life didn't return to what it was before. It became something different, and that was okay. I stood in the doorway the morning Ethan left for London. He had his bags ready, his sketchbook under his arm. He gave me a tight hug. "I love you, Mum," he said. "I love you too, Ethan. Always." As he walked down the street toward the bus stop, I stood for a while, watching him go. The same boy who used to fall asleep with crayons in his hand was now stepping into the world as a young man. And me? I closed the door gently, made a cup of tea, and sat by the window, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope? If you liked my story, please like, comment, and share. More simple and emotional stories are coming soon,